What if I told you that the $100 super high-modulus graphite rod you bought is actually making you miss fish? That the marketing, the tech specs, and the price tag are all built on a premise that might be completely wrong for the type of fishing most of us do. Today, we're putting this to the test. We are diving deep into whether your expensive ice fishing rod is actually less sensitive than a cheap one. By the end of this video, you'll understand the one crucial mistake nearly everyone makes when choosing a rod, and it might save you a lot of money and frustration. This is the hidden reason why some days the fish just aren't biting for you, while the old-timer next to you is pulling them up one after another. So let me ask you, and be honest, drop it in the comments right now. Do you believe a more expensive rod always means more fish? Let's find out. For years, the fishing industry has drilled one idea into our heads: price equals performance. We see ads for rods made with space-age materials, boasting about unbelievable sensitivity and the ability to feel every pebble. We're conditioned to believe that a stiffer, lighter, more expensive rod is the pinnacle of technology. The logic seems sound, right? A better material should transmit vibrations more efficiently, letting you feel that subtle tick of a fish inhaling your bait. We've all been there, standing in the aisle at the tackle shop, tapping rod tips on the floor, convincing ourselves that the $100 stick feels crisper than the $20 one. This belief system is so ingrained that it's almost heresy to question it. But what if the very thing we're paying for, that vibration-based sensitivity, is actually a handicap when you're hunched over a tiny hole in the ice? Let's start by setting the stage. Picture two rods side by side. On my left, we have the Graphite Pro Elite, a $150 marvel of engineering. It's incredibly light, stiff as a board, and has a fast-action tip. This is the kind of rod you see the pros using on television, the one that promises you'll feel a fish blink 100 feet down. On my right, we have a $10 fiberglass noodle special. It's floppy, feels almost like a toy, and has the backbone of a wet noodle. Your gut reaction, based on years of marketing, is to reach for the expensive graphite. It feels professional, it feels powerful, it feels sensitive. The cheap one feels, well, cheap. But we aren't here to judge based on feel in the hand. We're here to find out which one puts more fish on the ice. So why do we instinctively grab that expensive rod? It comes down to the marketing jargon we've been fed for decades. Words like high-modulus graphite, fast action, and extreme sensitivity are powerful. They create a perception of quality and an assurance of performance. We are told that these advanced materials are better at transmitting vibrations from the lure through the line, up the rod blank, and into your hand. The entire sales pitch is built around the idea that you will feel more. And in a way, that's true. A stiff graphite rod is like a tightly strung guitar string. It vibrates very efficiently. But here's the question we never stop to ask. Is feeling the bite the most effective way to detect a bite, especially in the dead of winter? Now we have to properly define sensitivity, and this is where everything starts to unravel. The myth we've been sold is that sensitivity is a single, one-dimensional thing, vibration. We imagine a fish tapping our lure, and that tick traveling up the line into our fingertips. For some types of fishing, like casting a jig for bass in the summer, this is absolutely crucial. You need to feel the difference between your lure hitting a rock, a weed, or a fish's mouth. This is what expensive graphite rods are masterfully designed to do. They are phenomenal conductors of vibration. But ice fishing, particularly for panfish like crappie and perch, is an entirely different game with a different set of rules. The bites are often far more subtle and don't always come as a classic thump. This brings us to the reality of sensitivity, which is that there are actually two types. First, there's the vibration sensitivity we just talked about, the feel. The second, and arguably more important for ice fishing, is visual sensitivity, the see. This is where that cheap rod starts to look a lot more interesting. visual sensitivity isn't about what you feel in your hand, it's about what you see at the rod tip. It's the ability of the rod tip to act as a strike indicator, physically moving in a way that signals a bite, even when no vibration is felt at all. And as we're about to see, the very properties that make a graphite rod great for feeling make it terrible for seeing. Herein lies the big problem with relying on vibration. A stiff graphite rod is designed to resist bending. It's built for backbone and power. When a light-biting fish like a crappie gently inhales your tiny tungsten jig, it often doesn't pull down hard enough to register as a thump on that stiff blank. Even worse is the dreaded up bite. The fish swims up after taking the lure, creating slack in your line. Your stiff rod tip won't move an inch. You feel absolutely nothing because there is no vibration to transmit. You're sitting there, completely oblivious, while the fish has already taken your bait, tasted the metal, and spit it out. You were waiting for a signal that was never going to come. Now, let's turn our attention back to that cheap $10 noodle rod, the one that feels like a piece of overcooked pasta. Most experienced anglers would walk right past it in the store. It's probably made of fiberglass or a cheap composite blend. It doesn't feel crisp or responsive. When you shake it, the tip wobbles all over the place. By every metric of feel that we've been taught, this rod is a failure. It dampens vibrations rather than transmitting them. It feels dull and lifeless in your hand. So, by the traditional definition, it is far less sensitive. But that's its secret weapon, not its weakness. Let's talk about the magic of that cheap fiberglass. This material is inherently less stiff and denser than high-modulus graphite. It acts as a shock absorber. This means it's not great at sending those tiny, high-frequency vibrations up to your hand. So yes, if you're trying to feel your jig bounce off a single pebble 40 feet down, you're out of luck. This confirms our initial suspicion. It's less sensitive to vibration, but remember, we're playing a different game now. We are not listening for the bite anymore. We are watching for it. That flexible, dead-feeling material is the perfect canvas for a visual bite detection system. This is the noodle rod's superpower, visual bite detection. Its incredibly soft tip is not a bug, it's a feature. It's designed to be a built-in strike indicator. When you're fishing with a small jig, the weight of the lure itself causes the tip to bend down significantly. The rod is now loaded. Any change to the weight on that tip becomes incredibly obvious. A fish pulling down will cause the tip to bend even more. A fish simply holding the lure will make the tip quiver. And most importantly, a fish lifting the lure will cause that preloaded tip to straighten out and rise. You see the bite with your eyes, clear as day, long before you would ever feel it. Let's replay that classic up-bite scenario. Imagine you're watching your line disappear into the dark water, your eyes glued to the rod tip. A finicky crappie slowly drifts up and inhales your jig, rising just a few inches in the water column as it does so. There's no pull, no thump, no vibration. On an expensive stiff graphite rod, nothing happens. The rod tip stays perfectly still. You are none the wiser. The fish spits the hook. Opportunity lost. You probably just think the fish aren't active today. You might even pack up and go home, completely frustrated, without ever knowing you were surrounded by fish. Now let's see that same exact up bite on the cheap noodle rod. The weight of your jig has the soft tip bent over in a gentle arc. That same crappie drifts up and inhales the bait, lifting it by just half an inch. Instantly the tension is released, and that bent noodle tip springs upward, straightening out. It's an unmissable visual cue. It's like a flag popping up. You might not feel a single thing in the rod handle, but your eyes tell you everything you need to know. You set the hook and reel in your fish. That is the power of visual sensitivity. It detects a class of bites that are completely invisible to a vibration-sensitive rod. And let's be clear, It's not just about the raw material. The design, or taper, of the rod plays a huge role. An expensive graphite rod is often designed with a fast or extra-fast action. This means only the very end of the tip bends, while the rest of the rod, the backbone, is extremely stiff. This design is fantastic for long casts, powerful hook sets, and controlling big fish. But think about it. How important are those things when you're just dropping a lure through a 6-inch hole in the ice? You don't need casting distance. The need for a bone-jarring hook set is often less critical with small hooks for panfish. Another critical factor is the lure weight. That high-performance, fast-action graphite rod is engineered to perform optimally with a certain range of lure weights, usually something like 1/8 to 1/4 of an ounce. When you tie on a tiny tungsten jig that weighs 1/64 of an ounce, the rod tip barely even registers that it's there. It doesn't load properly. The system isn't engaged. It's the equivalent of trying to weigh a single feather on a bathroom scale designed for a 300-pound person. The scale is technically functional, but it's the wrong instrument for that specific measurement, so it can't give you an accurate reading. Conversely, the cheap noodle rod absolutely thrives with those tiny jigs. Its super soft tip is designed specifically for that ultra-lightweight class. The 1/64 ounce jig is enough to put a perfect visible bend in the tip. This preloaded state is the entire key to the system. The tip is now armed and ready to signal any change in tension, no matter how small. It will show you a fish pulling down, a fish swimming sideways, and most importantly, that fish swimming up. The tool is perfectly matched to the task. It's like using a delicate jeweler's scale to weigh that feather. You get a perfect reading every time. So after all this, are we saying your expensive rod is a piece of junk? Absolutely not. It is an incredible piece of equipment, but it's a specialized tool. Think of it like a Formula One race car. It's built for a very specific purpose. If you're targeting aggressive lake trout, pike, or walleye with heavy spoons and rattling lures, you need that power. You need that stiff backbone to rip a lure through the water and drive a big hook home. In those situations, the bites are often so violent, you don't need a noodle tip to see them. You need a strong rod to handle them. The expensive rod is the perfect tool for that job. The fundamental problem is a mismatch of equipment. Most of us, most of the time, are targeting light-biting panfish with tiny jigs, yet we are often using a rod designed for aggressive power fishing. We are using a sledgehammer to tap in a thumbtack. The sledgehammer is a fantastic tool, but for that specific job, it's clumsy, inefficient, and you're likely to smash your thumb. The expensive rod isn't failing. We are failing to choose the right rod for our specific application, because we've been convinced that one size, or rather one price point, fits all situations. Here is another way to think about it. Imagine you are sitting in a completely silent, soundproof room. Your expensive, vibration-sensitive graphite rod is like having superhuman hearing. You can hear a pin drop from a mile away. You can hear every tiny creak in the floorboards. But what if the signal you're waiting for isn't a sound at all? What if instead a small red light is going to flash in the corner of the room? Your superhuman hearing is completely useless. You would miss the signal every single time because you're using the wrong sense to detect it. In this analogy, the cheap noodle rod is that flashing red light. It's a visual indicator. It intentionally tunes out all the background noise, the tiny, insignificant vibrations from you shivering, the wind blowing on your line, or your jig ticking off a piece of gravel. It doesn't distract you with information that doesn't matter. Instead, it focuses on one thing and one thing only, displaying a clear, unmissable visual signal the moment a fish changes the weight of your lure. It might be deaf to the pin drop, but it sees the flashing light perfectly. Let's not forget the human factor. When you're out on the ice, it's cold. Your hands are numb, even with gloves. You might be shivering slightly. The wind is constantly vibrating your line and rod. All of this creates sensory noise. Your expensive graphite rod, with its incredible ability to transmit vibrations, sends all of this noise directly to your cold, numb hand. It becomes almost impossible to distinguish the signal from the noise. Is that a fish, or did I just shiver? Was that a bite, or was it the wind? You end up with sensory overload and uncertainty. This is another area where the noodle rod shines. That soft, dampening fiberglass or composite material acts as a filter. It physically absorbs and deadens much of that high-frequency noise from wind and shivering. It doesn't transmit every useless vibration up the blank. The system naturally filters out the distracting information, so the only thing the tip really reacts to is the most important signal, the direct influence of a fish on your lure. It simplifies the communication, showing you only what you truly need to see to be successful. It brings clarity in a chaotic environment. So let's bring it all home with the final verdict. When you are targeting light-biting panfish like crappie, perch, or bluegill with small, lightweight jigs, which is what a huge percentage of ice anglers do, the visual sensitivity of a cheap, soft-tipped noodle rod is often far superior to the vibration sensitivity of an expensive, stiff graphite rod. The industry has sold you on the importance of feeling the bite, when for this application, seeing the bite is infinitely more effective. You haven't been buying a better rod, you've been buying the wrong kind of sensitivity for the job. So, let's wrap this all up. The big revelation here isn't that cheap rods are inherently better than expensive ones. The shocking truth is that many of us have been measuring sensitivity completely wrong. We've been chasing the feel when we should have been training our eyes for the see. That $100 rod isn't a lie, it's an excellent tool. But the way it's marketed to everyday panfish anglers often is. It's built for a different game, a different style of fishing. This realization should make you completely rethink your ice fishing setup. Before you drop big money on your next rod, stop and ask yourself a simple question. Am I trying to feel a walleye crush a half-ounce spoon? Or am I trying to see a tiny crappie simply breathe on my jig? The answer will tell you exactly which rod you need, and it might just be the $10 one. Thanks for sticking with me through this. If this blew your mind, or just saved you some money, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more fishing tips that break the rules. I really appreciate it. Now I have to ask you, what's the biggest fishing lie or myth you've ever fallen for? Let's get a real conversation going in the comments below.